For the rest of Chapter 12, we're really going to be focusing in on different features of the second line of defense. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit more about the second and third lines together with kind of an overview. All right, so what we're going to see repeatedly as we discuss the second and third lines of defense are that both of these lines are concerned with searching out, recognizing, and destroying things that are foreign to the body. Okay, and so in order to do that, the immune system has to be able to distinguish between what we call self and non-self. So non-self, those will be things that are foreign to the body, so microorganisms that invade the body, but also things like pollen grains, for example. And then self will be any of your cells or tissues or molecules. We don't want the immune system attacking those and destroying them. And so what you see over here is kind of a diagram just in general showing this concept to you. And so you got a white blood cell, kind of a generic white blood cell here. And these are supposed to be self cells, so cells in your body. And what it's showing you is that the cells of your immune system do probe or make contact with your own cells, but they're not supposed to destroy them. There's supposed to be no reaction to that. So ideally, your immune system does not attack your own cells and tissues. But when your immune system comes into contact with some sort of foreign cell or a virus, ideally what's going to happen is you're going to have cells that are going to attach to it and engulf it, perform phagocytosis, and bring it in and destroy it. And so I want you guys to right now start thinking about how usually the end goal of your immune system, its strategy is to get things phagocytosed, because phagocytosis is the process by which things get engulfed into phagocytic cells, and that's how they get destroyed. So in general, that's what your immune system is trying to accomplish. But because these microorganisms are so clever, the pathogens have so many different strategies to get around phagocytosis, much of your immune system is concerned with getting that to happen anyway. And we'll see that more and more as we move through our discussion of the immune system. So we'll see too that microbes, as well as other things that are foreign to the body, so your immune system attacks other things, that are not microorganisms. Anything that's foreign to your body, your immune system should be trying to attack. But since we're in a microbiology class, we generally focus in on the immune system's attack on these pathogenic microbes. And as we'll see, they're generally evaluated through surface molecules. Your textbook calls these markers, molecules on the surface that have these three-dimensional shapes that can be recognized by cells of the immune system. Those are generally going to be proteins and or carbohydrates, sugar patterns that exist on the surfaces. So we'll see more than one example of that. And you see one over here that we'll talk about shortly. So this abbreviation that you see right there, PAMPs, that's another name for these markers that occur on the surfaces of microorganisms that are foreign to the body. And your phagocytic cells, like macrophages, neutrophils, we'll talk more about those shortly, they have receptors on their surface that very specifically bind to these, what we call PAMPs, that are marker molecules that your immune system recognizes as foreign to the body. But the goal there is to get these foreign microorganisms destroyed. Okay, now as you guys will see as we move through the next couple of chapters, your immune system, it's not like it has any specific boundaries. It exists throughout your body, which is important because microorganisms can invade essentially any part of the body. So the immune system, the cell warriors and also these protein warriors that we're going to be talking about, or protein weapons that we're going to be talking about, they need to be able to access essentially almost any part of the body. Now there is a name for locations in the body where you tend to have lots of these phagocytic cells. So they're going to be positioned or poised in areas where they're most likely going to encounter invading microorganisms. And so some people refer to, almost like we have a body system of these phagocytic cells that attack invaders, and there's a long name for that, reticuloendothelial system. And this is referring to, so when you guys take Biology 201, you learn you have your epithelial tissues, and then underlying your epithelial tissues, you have connective tissues. And those connective tissues have lots of protein fibers in them. They're fibrous. They have a jelly-like fluid filling. And so those locations are where you have a lot of phagocytic cells, either poised all the time, or those phagocytic cells can very rapidly enter those connective tissues when microorganisms start to invade the body. So that's sometimes called the reticuloendothelial system, these connective tissue areas that have phagocytes stationed inside them. This is a diagram of a human body over here, and what it's trying to show you is that these phagocytic cells are not always stationed in equal numbers in all parts of the body. There are certain areas of the body where they're concentrated in heavier numbers. And many of those are locations where microorganisms tend to invade or access the body. Like look over here, you've got a pretty high concentration of phagocytic cells up here in the upper chest area, which kind of makes sense because the respiratory system, your lungs are in there, and that's an area of invasion. Or down here in the groin area, because microorganisms can access the urinary and reproductive tracts pretty easily. That's a point of invasion. Down here in the abdomen, digestive system is a portal of entry for microorganisms. Your body fluids, like your blood, your lymph, interstitial tissue fluids, CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, those are all going to be places where you'll have cellular weapons and these chemical weapons available to attack microorganisms, because microorganisms that invade the body are going to wind up in your body fluid. So we need to have these cells and so forth positioned in those locations. This is a diagram from an older textbook that I kind of like because it is showing you where we have cells called macrophages stationed all the time. So RES here is reticuloendothelial system. So macrophages are professional phagocytes. They're very good at doing phagocytosis. And so we'll be talking about how you have cells in your blood that can exit the blood and get into your tissues and become macrophages. When that happens, those are called wandering macrophages. So they're in your blood. In your blood, they're called monocytes, little oval-shaped cells. But they can get out of your blood capillaries through a process called diapedesis that we'll learn about. They can actually squeeze through the walls of your capillaries. And they can get into your tissues, your connective tissues, and wander around and find things to engulf and destroy. Those are called wandering macrophages. But then you have, in certain parts of the body, you always have macrophages stationed, and those are called fixed macrophages, and they tend to be at locations that are portals of entry, places where microorganisms are very likely to be encountered. And these macrophages have particular names in some parts of the body. For example, in your lungs, here on the diagram, you have macrophages that are always stationed around the little tiny air sacs in the lungs called the alveoli, so those are called alveolar macrophages. In your brain, you have special macrophages called microglia. You probably remember studying a little bit about those when you took Biology 201. In your liver, the liver filters the blood, and you have macrophages stationed in your liver all the time called Kupffer cells. So when you guys take Biology 202, you learn that the blood that is draining off of the small intestine and the stomach and the spleen and the large intestine as well, that blood all, before it returns to the heart, it goes to the liver first, because the liver filters that blood and processes it. So in other words, this blood that is draining off of your digestive organs, your lower digestive organs, goes first to the liver. It gets filtered there. It's a good thing to have macrophages stationed there, because the lower digestive tract is a big-time portal of entry for microorganisms. So hopefully if any microorganisms get into the bloodstream from your digestive organs, they're going to get picked up by these Kupffer cells in the liver. We've also talked about dendritic cells already in the epidermis of the skin and in some of your mucous membranes as well. The kidneys kidneys also filter the blood to make urine. So because you can have microbes in your blood, it's good to have macrophages stationed there as well. In your spleen, you've got lots of macrophages in the spleen that are poised and ready to intercept microorganisms. Also, when you guys study the spleen in Biology 202, you learn that the spleen filters out older, worn-out red blood cells. And so macrophages have to do phagocytosis on those as well, because we need to break those down and recycle their parts. All right, so that was just a little bit of a intro to the second and third lines of defense and how we screen out self versus non-self. Plus, we talked a little bit more about macrophages and where they're stationed. For the third video lecture, we're going to talk a little bit more about how the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic systems is important for immunity, for immune system functions. That'll be the topic for our third video lecture for Chapter 12.